The P in passion stands for purpose. If we don't take time out to define what our purpose is, we feel pretty disconnected with who we are. So many people I come across are going about doing their work, but they're just not connected into the purpose. Why do we want to connect with our purpose? Well, when we do that, whether we use some of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which talks about when we are defined with our purpose and linking with our purpose, we feel valuable. We feel like we're making a contribution, and our happiness is then linked in once we've got that purpose right. So, for example, part of the purpose is also really working out what's the legacy that you want to leave behind. So many books that I've read and many teachers that I've worked with are very clear once they get very successful, whether they work on a local, a state, a national or a global scale. All the people that are very successful, whether they be in business or sports, they're very clear in terms of why they're doing what they're doing. It's not the what we're doing that we spend most of our life on. We want to get the why piece right. And in the why, we start to go into the details of what's the legacy you want to leave behind. One of the best quotes that I saw was by Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in this book, I was just amazed when I read, and he talked about what is the legacy that you want to leave behind? What do you want your funeral to look like when people actually come to celebrate your life at the end of your life? Now, I had never considered this question, and I just thought the question was so amazing, I started to then define some of my own funeral. And I know that this might sound crazy, but I started to think about who are the people that I would want to attend my funeral? What sort of celebrations do I want to have? Who will actually give some of my eulogies? And again, this wasn't about whether these people would be alive or not. For example, I'd love my father, who was a mentor and a real inspiration for me, to be giving my eulogy. And so I started to think about how I wanted it constructed, because how I want to be remembered at the end of my life and how you want to be remembered at the end of your life then starts to define your purpose, and what are some of the things when we work backwards in terms of things that you want to be working on now and getting that part clear. Wayne Dyer, who's a wonderful teacher around the world, talks about and tells a story about the fact that we don't want to die with the music in us. You don't want to get to your deathbed and go, I wish my life had been different. I wish I had done different things to be able to get to that point. I wish I had done less work, or I wish I'd focused on my health, or I wish I'd spent more time with my kids, or I wish I'd created that business and followed some of my heart and my passion around it. So it's so important to be able to take that time out and do that. I often call the purposes a little bit like vision in organisations. Organisations spend a lot of time getting that vision piece right, which is really their purpose. When they get that piece right, they know that all the operational stuff, their people stuff, will link in and will follow in once they get that piece right. So it's a little bit like that in our lives. When we get our purpose right, all the bits that we do, the relationships we create, and other things that we're going to talk about, that all fits in once we get that initial piece right, once we get that vision and that piece right. So when something doesn't work, what does that mean? Marianne Williamson, who's another one of my teachers and writes amazing books that have been published all around the world, talks about the fact that what if I'm actually doing something that I think is my purpose, and then it actually doesn't link in, I don't feel very happy about it. And she defines that really well. She actually talks about the fact that if you're doing something and it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't your purpose. And other teachers that I've worked with talk about the same thing. It's certainly one of our beliefs at the Passionate People Institute, and we talk about the fact that if something feels really hard, something's not flowing, and you really don't feel very satisfied with it, it's not that it can't be challenging, but you don't feel satisfied with it, it probably isn't part of your purpose. So I had spent time, like many of you, spending my time working in a lot of my ego part and doing all the things. So one of the things that I did was I studied pretty hard because I came from an Indian family which was very, very focused around education. So my parents weren't very well off, and they said, right, you've got to get an education, you've got to make sure that you get a degree, and you've got to make sure that you get a job. So I went down that path and studied engineering. And then I said, well, if I'm going to become, great at my job and become a senior manager and a leader, I thought that my purpose was really to earn a lot of money, to become really successful, to make my family proud, and that would define a lot of my success. So I did all of that, and I got to that. And then, by luck, a little bit of hard work, I actually got to become a senior manager in one of the world's largest companies, BHP Billiton. And I got to travel the world and earn a lot of money. I finished my MBA by this time, but there was a part of me that just didn't feel very satisfied. And I'm not sure if you are like that, whether you do some things and you can be good at certain things, but again, as I was talking about earlier, you get to that point where it just doesn't feel like it's meant to be what you're doing. It doesn't feel like it's meant to be your purpose. So I got offered then more and more opportunities with this company to go and work overseas as well. And I really wasn't sure. I was in a relationship that wasn't going great at the time. I was in this job which on the outside looked like it was fantastic, but internally I just felt like something was missing. That part of me was saying that this is not what I'm meant to do, but everybody was telling me how successful I was. And this was the time that I took a month out and I rearranged my holidays and I decided that I'd go trekking in Nepal. It was around September 11, and so a lot of people had decided that they weren't going to travel, and I decided that I was just going to follow this holiday that I really wanted and to be able to get there and do that. And so I got to Nepal, and it was the first time, having grown up in India, I just expected all the kids would, beg for food and money, and none of them did that. Out of my whole travels there, nobody did that. And, people were just so lovely and kind, and they would often just come up to me and talk to me and just say hello and want nothing. And I got to experience how content these people were. In fact, one of the stories that I want to share with you is this little boy who was about 5. He just had these beautiful, amazing, eyes. And he walked up to me and he said, hello. And so I had a backpack and I took my backpack off and I took out a little lolly, one of these 1-cent lollies, and I gave him this lolly. And before I knew it, his little sister, who was about 3 years old, who was also beautiful, ran up. And I thought, here we go, she'll ask me for another lolly. And you know what? She didn't. And he didn't. And what he did was he took his lolly and he bit it in half and he gave it to his sister. And then he took a couple more sucks out of his lolly and he wrapped it up and he put it into his pocket. And I thought to myself then, that is contentment. That is somebody who almost lives day by day and has their purpose defined. So I felt that even though they had so much less than I did, they seemed so much more content, so much more happier. And it was in Nepal that I defined my purpose. So it was really important that when you experience things like that, we don't feel content, it's really important to look internally around your purpose and start to say, what is it that I really want? What is that little bit of that lolly that I would feel content with and I would feel like I was living my purpose and what I'm meant to do on this planet?